Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Not by anything in particular, but just life. The journey of life can be daunting between working to pay the bills, growing your relationships to keep your family afloat. And then, where does that leave time for yourself and your personal health? Welcome to the I Killed My Own Killer book series and podcast, where we are all about juggling and managing all of your responsibilities to be by your side in growing through it all. This brand is here to help you achieve your goals, whether they are personal and emotional goals you set for yourself, business goals you want to hit in your career, or physical and nutritional goals you want to accomplish to be a healthier version of yourself. Whatever your goals are, stay tuned for tips and tricks to make accomplishing them easier for you. Each episode will help you significantly improve in one aspect of your life or another.
Awesome. So hello, Facebook family. I am here with the awesome Ethan Smoorenburg. He's going to introduce himself, but I just want to let you viewers watching know that we are recording episode number 14 of the I Killed My Own Killer book series and podcast, where we're all about personal development. So the new year is right around the corner, and I need to get motivated in my health and fitness. So that's why I really wanted to interview Ethan, because he is all about that. I'm going to go ahead and let him take it away with an awesome introduction on who he is.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caitlin, and hello, viewers. I'm honored to be here today. My name is Ethan. If you can spell my last name without looking at it, I'll give you a prize. Last name Smoorenburg. I am a franchise business consultant with Self-Esteem Brands, which is the ownership of Anytime Fitness Corporate. I help support clubs in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, mainly supporting franchisees with coaching and consulting services. So recognize what that means. It's not just about giving your business more profitability. It's also supporting you as a whole person, which is a big part of why I'm excited to be here today with Caitlin. I live in Louisiana. Caitlin and I grew up down the street from each other, and I have a lovely wife named Allie and a beautiful son named Theodore.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself into your career and also into your family life too, because I like to share both worlds, because a lot of people, they'll look at somebody that's into health and fitness and they're like, oh, well, he's a single man. Of course he has time to hit the gym. Or sometimes it's a young and upcoming person where it's like, oh, well, they're just getting started. Of course they can take care of themselves. But when you get a family, you move up in your career, things get a little bit more difficult. So has that really happened for you, or has it been easy peasy for you this entire time?
Oh yeah, it's a challenge. It's through that piece of going from single guy to relationship to growing in your faith and your family. It's prioritizing your intentions, and what health and wellness means to you. And I think, to your point, this may actually be more motivating to me now to have that motivation of my son and my family. So it makes it a lot more worth it instead of doing it just for myself, doing it for others too, who are the most important.
I'm so happy you put it into perspective like that. So your son and your wife, is that your motivation and your drive and what gets you going every day?
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. It's caused a positive shift in perception going throughout life, going from growing up, like I said, spending time as a bachelor, falling in love with your spouse, your significant other, and falling in love with your child too. There's a lot more motivation and purpose for that than the other way.
Yeah, the bachelor life is good for a little period in time, but then your eyes are open to the true beauty in life, which is, finding your spouse and then having kids. But for somebody like yourself, you mentioned that we grew up in the same town, which we did. And I have a lot of that in my book about just how your environment is such a huge factor in how you see the world and health. I know I would go to West End gas station and get those powdered donuts for breakfast every morning with an orange juice, thinking I'm doing, I had breakfast for the day. But I never realized how important, nutrition and health really is until I moved to another city and I took my own health into my own hands. So for you, do you think the environment that you grew in played a part into your health?
That's a really good question. And if I have your permission, this may be a loaded answer that may have two sides to it. So yes, your environment's going to be conducive to what your outcome is. Now, your outcome may be what your desired outcome is or what's unexpected. So for me personally, growing up with a father figure who was very attuned to his health and wellness, and using it for the right purposes and intentions, that was my initial motivation going through there. Now, I think that's for me personally. Now, there are some negative sides of it, which I'll get to here. So thanks for letting me speak on that. But I don't want to be negative. I want to make sure I shed light on other aspects of what our intentions are. Going back to where we're from, in our lovely state of Louisiana, I think that we are very societally influenced. I think that we are very, for lack of a better term, I think we're ignorant to trauma. We have a lot of things in our past that may have been detrimental to us, these micro conflicts. And when I say micro, quick happenings and things that we don't expect, right, that are very harmful to us. We don't recognize that because society may tell us where we're from that it's not okay to struggle. Right. So being stuck in that place of struggle will paralyze you, and being paralyzed keeps you in that place of traumatic experience. Really deep point that we're trying to make here. But what I'm saying is that paralyzation doesn't motivate action. And we look for the perfect time and place to get involved with our health and wellness, our physical and mental health. And that perfect place doesn't exist. So what I'm saying is perfectionism will inevitably lead to procrastination. So as individuals like you and I talking here, I think our generation, whatever they call us now, millennials, Gen X, Ethan and Caitlin, whomever, is that we are very self-aware to that, and we're open to talking about that. I challenge the generations that preceded us, and that may have been detrimental to us. We're being bold and brave here and talking about it, and I think uncovering that is going to bring you to the place of that desired outcome that we started at here. Overall, though, for me personally, I'm very, very happy to say that my environment was conducive to being healthy mentally and physically overall.
Yeah. Wow. You're so deep. I love it. You said that was a loaded answer, but it was loaded with so much good stuff too, to where I am ready to replay this right now and take notes on it, because it has me just like answering a few questions in my own head or asking myself really deep questions that I never thought of. But the reason I asked you that is because in my book, I talk about my dad dying at the age of 40 of a heart attack, and his dad dying of the same thing. So for me personally, I grew up in a household where, health, fitness, nutrition wasn't that big of a priority. But it's cool to see you on the other side of the spectrum where your dad, he did make his health a priority, and just how that trickled down into your life.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point you raised there. I think we certainly don't want to put everyone on a pedestal here. Everyone has their struggles and everyone has things that they can get better at. But witnessing my dad's purpose for that at a young age was certainly beneficial to me. And then there, like I said, there can be negatives to it. You mentioned your father's killer, your grandfather's killer, and I wanted to relate to you here. I felt my killer growing up was ego, pride, arrogance, those things. And I felt my killer actually directly influenced what my wife's was at some point. So there's a little foreshadowing there. Can I back up a little bit and explain what that is? Okay. So after school, when you get into that point of what's my purpose, right? When we leave high school, when we leave an environment, I thought we had a great environment where we went to overall. Definitely some things that could have went better. Probably when we leave that, we search for what our purpose is. And if we leave that nest, then it's going to be really difficult. So I tried finding purpose in the sport of bodybuilding. And this is not an indictment against bodybuilding. There's a lot of positives that can come from this sport, a lot of positive community influences that can come from it. But it goes back to what your intention for doing it is and the time in which it's taking place from where you're doing it.
Yeah.
So this is very secondarily for killing my killer. I'll give the primary with my wife coming up.
Okay.
So secondarily getting to that point, I found out that though I was humbly doing well in that sport, that consists of a lot of vanity, whether you like it or not. At some point, I recognized it was fueling my ego, and not fueling my ego to the point of I need to post this picture and see how many likes I get type of thing, but ego to the point that I was placing my identity in something other people thought I should be. So that was fueling that. I felt like I was trying to do that for them versus being who I wanted to be with that. So again, not an indictment on that, but recognizing that my ego and was being fueled by that, wasn't a positive thing for my relationship at the time with Allie, who was my girlfriend at the
Yeah.
time. Primarily, biggest thing here, my wife has struggled with an eating disorder her entire life, and it's something that I am proud to support her with. Inevitably, a sport that consists of maximum level of dieting, vanity, and ego is going to fuel that killer, which is her eating disorder. So knowing that the participation in the activities that I was in was motivating the negative impact on her, that was a no-no for me. And it wasn't something that just automatically happened. There was definitely some tug and pull, but through that nudge of each other and remaining as a unit, in that remaining as one, in that we understood, like, okay, going back to what I said first, what's our desired outcome? Be faithful, righteous people, be together as one, and have a child, right? And we didn't think that desired outcome could happen until we dissolved those pieces of ourself, and we knew we could do it together, but with the right intentions. My intention of being in that for someone else, I was catering to other people who I cared less about than my wife at that point. So that was at some point an easy decision to make when we peel back that onion and get to the real layer of it that is most conducive to where we want to be. So that's the dark side of it, right? There's definitely a light side of this. There's definitely more positive, but it's recognizing what your intentions are for what you're doing with your health. And I'm just telling my story here so that if this helps one person recognize that, that's huge for me. If this helps one person recognize, like, man, I'm struggling, my coping mechanism probably isn't best right now. Let's take a step back and reassess. That's my goal in sharing that. So I appreciate it, but that's for me personally. This is not an indictment on anything. I just want to make sure that I'm being vulnerable and authentic here, so that people understand why my perception is what it is.
For sure. Thank you so much for being so transparent about everything and how it not only affected you, but affected your family, and how you had to put the brakes on it because it wasn't good for you and your family. I think the biggest takeaway is awareness and recognition, because sometimes we like to do things on our own because it feeds us, but we fail to realize it's not feeding our spouse, and it's actually doing the opposite. It's hurting them.
Absolutely.
So that was awesome that you shared that. And I'm sure it is speaking life to many men out there. I know even for myself as a woman, I'm taking so many bits and pieces away of just your story, and it's already changing my life. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, going for what your purpose is here, it made me realize, like, oh, wow, this is a theme that makes sense everywhere. So me killing the parts of myself that got me the most trophies, achievements, and recognition is what brought me to the place that is what I think is the best version of myself so far. So that's you, just to give you a compliment there. I appreciate that. It helped me really recognize that in understanding this over the preparation of this.
Thank you so much. That's what the I Kill My Own Killer book series and podcast is all about, killing our killers every single day. And sometimes they're so big and it blinds us, but I feel like once we overcome them, God has something so much greater in store for us. Then we can take a step back and say, wow, thank you. I'm so happy I killed that killer. And it's a process, because I'm sure you didn't overcome that in one day and it was smooth sailing. I'm sure there's times where you see pictures on Instagram or Facebook of people in the bodybuilding industry, and you're tempted, or your desire is still kind of there, but it's not good for you for your personal reasons.
Sure. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. There's that yearning to compete in some sense, and I think we can take that. That's what we need to recognize is what's really going on here. Is it for me, is it a desire to compete on stage for something? No, probably not. But it is a desire to be a competitive individual with your best self. And that's where I'm at now. Before, like, I'll say this on here, like, I was the one, I don't want to be the person who's just recognized as being a husband and a father. And then I look back, and when I realized and reflected on that, like, well, there's once you get there, once you experience it, that's really all that matters and that you want to be. So that's where I try to manage my intentions. I'm going to keep saying that word today. I know that's a loaded or a buzzword nowadays, but like in those actions you take, to your point, when you're utilizing your self-awareness, is it attributing to you fueling the best version of yourself? Positive or negative? Let's look at it on both sides. So it takes a lot of self-assessment, learning, and, like you said, some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so funny and ironic that you were one of those guys that said, I'm not just going to be a dad or a husband and leave it at that. You wanted something extra on there. For me personally, I used to look at stay-at-home moms and I was like, I'm never going to be a stay-at-home mom. I love making money and I love always having these goals and I love being my own boss, blah, blah, blah. God humbled me in pregnancy and everything else. And I realized I love being a mother. I love being a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
But I just have to find balance through it all.
Sure. Yeah. Good point is that like you have to have that humble submission, I think, to it, and when I like stepped off stage for the last time, I proposed to my wife, 4 months later, I think we got married a year later. At that point, we were able to recognize the need for recovery in our household and for Allie for what she struggled with. She bravely embraced that and went on her own in another state and recovered, and sought that process. And 2 months after that, we were pregnant. and here we are, and it's the best case scenario for us now, for where we're at now. We hear come as you are, and we're it's understanding that while we may not be where we want to be right now, we are where we are, and it's never about starting over. It's about starting here, and using that to move forward with.
Wow, that's so good. I'm so happy that you are so open about your walk and her walk and how y'all come together through it all. And it seems like you feed off of her and she feeds off of you and you're a team through it all.
Absolutely. Yeah, we say a team, a unit, even if we're outside of our home together. That's the intention that Allie and I set is, what's our word that we can use to make sure we're remaining a unit. And we do have one when we are in a place where we may be pulled in different directions. That's okay, right? But do we have the wherewithal and the awareness to come back together and encounter situations and use our collective voice? That's what we say in what our sacrament of marriage is that we're no longer independent of each other. We are one person, one being, one household, one family. So it's taking that intention, not just in the house, because that's comfortable, right? But when you exit that comfort zone, do you have the skill set and the muscle, right, to be able to embrace what's unexpected?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. You both are such a beautiful example of what marriage is. Now, obviously, you have your good days and you have some bad days. And I'm sure there are some where, you're really killing it and then she not so much, or she's just killing it. And you are like, hey, girl, I need some of your energy. So my question for you is whenever y'all are in those moments, how do you help one another out? Whenever, you are on it and she's not, or vice versa.
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a couple we have, but there's one that's really stuck out for us is we have to recognize who's there. There's three modes I think you can be in when conflict arises. Okay. There's critical parent, there's child mode, and there's neutral, I think. So it's one of us has to recognize that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we both might be in different roles in that, but we've made that pact as a unit. Like when we're in conflict, we're going to call not the other person out only, but each other out on that because we're one, right? Hey, look, what am I like reflecting and reviewing? Hey, I'm being a critical parent right now. Hey, I'm hearing you're kind of in child mode right now. What can we do to get back to equilibrium on this? For us, it's stopping and praying. It doesn't happen quick every time. It certainly doesn't. But I tell like what we've heard from like what I Love Lucy in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, like don't go to sleep mad at each other. That's certainly not a thing in our household. It used to be a thing. But it took that time and that commitment to that. It's not about like, it's okay with failing in that and recognizing that, but showing up with that intention, there's the word again, showing up is what matters. So that's what helps us is recognizing what mode we're in. We're inevitably going to trigger each other. Yeah. Going back to that piece of trauma and our culture being ignorant to it, there's still things I say that I shouldn't. That I have to catch myself and recognize. But for us, we're not going to end that confrontation without recognizing who was what, admitting fault and stopping and praying about it too.
Yeah, that's so good. And I love that you said just stopping and praying, and it doesn't always happen right then and there, but that's what you have to do. Recently, we've been focusing on in our household is like the Bible says, the power is in the tongue. So like even little things that we may say here and there that culture finds acceptable, the world's always saying it. So why don't we say it too? We're realizing we don't want to speak life, those kind of things on our family or onto our son. So we're kind of having to press the brakes on that too, or at least being aware about it. Or earlier today, Lincoln was doing something absurd. And I said, Lincoln, you're not going to keep telling mama no, because he says no now, or he'll put sentences together. And it's the cutest thing. So for like a week, I was like, okay, But now I'm like, no, you're getting out of hand. And whenever I said, you're not going to tell mommy no anymore, DePaul said, about time. And I said, babe, now is not the time for you to say that. So I think I recognized the inner child in him, and I wanted to attack that inner child. But that's a conversation that we could have later on as parents. So I love how you broke down how we operate in those three categories, and just being aware of that will get you ahead and learn from those lessons.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that too. And that's a thing here too. Like you know me, I joke about things often. But it's to the when you hit that button, you hit that trigger, like we have to recognize while that may not be hurtful to you, that other person isn't you. And everyone has a right to feel the way they feel. And there's a big difference between what reaction and response is. Reaction's not thoughtful, not thought out. It's not it's not nice. but response is something that's calculated and humble, and it's empathetic as well. So I think, like you said, recognizing that, poking that button and understanding, okay, and being humble enough to say, like, my bad, I shouldn't have done that. That goes back to ego. Like, if you have that, it's probably something you need to work on dissolving.
And I think that is, for me personally, just listening to your story, is the biggest thing that I see that you have changed from high school Ethan to man Ethan now, is you realize you had an ego, you was letting pride get in the way, where they have 40, 50-year-old men that still have that. And that's why they're suffering with relationships or being a father or many areas of their life. So my question for you is, how did you slay that giant? Like, how did you learn to put your ego aside, as hard as it was, because it was with you as you grew up, and I'm sure it became bigger and bigger. So how did you kill that ego?
Yeah, man. So I'll have to flash back a little bit here to before my son was born, like straying away from the church, not straying away to the point of not having a relationship with God, but being lazy in my faith. That's a point where I recognize that, and my wife is the one, and another friend of mine are the ones who brought me back into that. So that was step one. Nothing happens without that. Going into it though, walking that narrow path in there is recognizing that, okay, when I was at that point of decide or keep going in ego, okay, what does this person look like? What is the ideal father? What is that person? Who is that person? And then showing up to be that person. And it can be as little as just catching yourself in the moment of not saying something, admitting fault to something. But in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, so I don't want to plagiarize here, he says that if there's something you want to be, you need to show up and cast a vote for yourself as that person every day, in some way, shape, or form. It can be all 24 hours. It can be 1 second, but don't skip a day of not showing up. So that was big for me. And then realizing that I couldn't do it on my own, that it wasn't going to be a one-man show. So seeking help in the avenues that were available to me. Of course, my wife, number one, well, God, number one, my wife, number 1A in there, friends, in that aspect, but also seeking therapy for that. Understanding that it's okay to admit that you struggle, you have faults, and you can speak to someone about this who is probably very smart and qualified and will love you as you are. And I think getting to that point over years is what helped me. And I'm not saying it's going to take that long for other people, but for me, that's what my showing up was. It was being in those uncomfortable scenarios that was killing that part of myself that probably made me most safe over time. The enthusiasm. Now I have enthusiasm, don't get me wrong, but what's your intention for showing your enthusiasm? Right? The showmanship, the charisma. There's some negative aspects of that I had that fueled my ego, that were brought about from past events that I had to uncover, recognize, identify, encounter with compassion, and overcome. And for me, that happened through therapy.
Wow. Yeah, you have gone through so much, and the transformation is huge. And I love how you said it started off with putting God first, then your wife, and then surrounding yourself with other people that are going to point those things out. And then wrapping it all up with therapy. And the world, I don't know, for some reason, if you mention a counseling session or therapy, everybody's like, oh my God, what's wrong? Where I think we need to normalize therapy.
Yeah.
A month ago, one of my friends was talking to me about just like anxiety as a mom. And I realized I had Lincoln, but then I also had a miscarriage. So like hormones are crazy. And for the longest, I just put it off as like, it'll be okay eventually. And then I went to a therapist, and she is like fixing all my problems I didn't even think I have. And I can honestly say I go to therapy, and it is the best hour of my week. I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And it really is. It's such a motivating and positive experience that gives you energy like no other. Yeah, it can be, it's like getting beat up sometimes, but it's very similar in a way to working out or being present with your health and fitness, right? It's showing up and doing the difficult items. We're not trying to lift the world over our heads, but there's going to be days that are hard for us to show up, and it goes back to that habit, that atomic habit I talked about of showing up. It's not, no one's going to be mad at you for showing up and being there
No.
if your intentions are right. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for sharing everything too. And I love how you just shared that like it's just like working out. You work your physical muscles, you have to work your personal ones too.
Yeah.
And me and a friend was recently talking about like we will go and say we went to the gym, but we won't say that we went to counseling. When if you look at it, it's basically the same thing. You go to the gym to get better in your physical health. So you go to counseling to get better in your mental health, emotional health, or whatever it is for you.
Yeah.
And like you said, it feels like you're getting beat up when you're in the midst of it. But hey, when you're having a good workout and you're really going hard, that's exactly how it feels. But then you're so happy afterwards when it's all done.
Yeah, most definitely. It's always worth it. There's never going to be a day where you say, "Man, I shouldn't have done that." If you're going back to intentions, if your intentions for that were to positively fuel you, the one thing that we haven't talked about here is like how you look, right? And that's where the negative intention might be. Of course, that's going to be a byproduct, and something that comes from that is your physicality adjusting from being physically active. But one thing that's hard for me is that people say they have to do that to be more confident, when confidence is something that's internal, right? It's some, I know you're familiar with Brendan Burchard, and that he talks about like being someone that generates confidence, right? That's something that's internal. So that goes back to the intention I'm talking about, is if your intention for working out is to look a certain way, and thinking that's going to give you more confidence, that's going to be very empty, because you're worth more than having to look a certain way in order for yourself or other people to feel a certain way about you, right? If that were the case, then when we would go to a job interview, have a presentation, meet with family, our outcome would be based on how we look. And that's certainly not the case there. So that's what I challenge people listening is, if that's your intention right now, then at some point it's going to catch up to you. It's going to be very hard to overcome that. Not saying you should not work out and be active and move. Please do that. Move well, move often, whether it's in the gym, which is proven to be a safe preventative health system to combat COVID and other illnesses that are going on right now. That environment does magnificent things for whether you're struggling, whether you're needing to get healthier, stronger, you have a chronic illness, fighting cancer, all of the above. But it can take place there, in nature, or moving with activities that you like. I just challenge everyone that your intention is based on that improvement of your best self, and not being another identity that's not conducive to what you're uniquely and fashioned and purposed to be.
Wow, that's so good. So what would you tell somebody who previously they went to the gym or they wanted to work out just to look good? So for somebody having to change that mindset and change the way they look at themselves, what would you tell them to inspire them to go back to the gym or to become that healthier version of themselves?
Sure. Yeah. What is your purpose for wanting to become better? That's a very kind of vague question there. But, I think we can't just ask one question when it comes to that piece of someone who's struggling with that. We have to dig deeper and give almost the 80-20 rule. I would rather listen to someone who's in that position and let them speak to me than me speaking at them and trying to motivate them. I'm not going to be able to gain permission for that until I find out what that underlying reason is. And as a coach, as a trainer, as a consultant, I want to know that, not because I'm nosy, but because I want your best for you. And there's the killer, right? Is probably that underlying thing. Let's find out what that is, and let it be known that my intention is to walk with you through that and not use that against you. But showing up still, but dissolving that piece so that that's not your primary motivation.
My takeaway from that is because it goes so much deeper than what, one sentence can fix or one solution can fix. You got me like ready to go talk, well, not even talk my head off, but go listen my heart out to my husband, because for years it has been on our dream board that he's going to have the six pack that he used to have in our college days. And the motivation, to be honest, has not been there. And granted, I love my husband no matter what, but that was his reason why he wanted to get fit and eat healthy, is because he wanted those abs. So in his mind, he thinks that he needs to have these friends that have six packs to get that, where in actuality, just from listening to you, we've got to go a little bit deeper and stop making our reason to get into the gym so surface as far as just the six pack.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and certainly it's not wrong to want to be confident or want
Yeah.
to improve yourself. So that's number one. And again, I don't want to be in opposition of what supports my livelihood.
Yeah.
But it goes back to that. Is it necessary? Is it necessary for what your end result, your desired outcome is? What's your desired outcome? Whether it's being a grade A husband, father, person, individual, coworker, whatever that is. Do you need to have that to be that?
Yeah.
Or is it something that, and if it's something that will help you get there, sure. But is it worth going deeper with that? Yeah.
I'm going to replay this afternoon just so he can hear it and we can listen to it together, because those are some awesome tips right there. And I appreciate you for saying that getting into the gym is one way to combat COVID, just because I'm a group fitness instructor and a lot of our participants have not been coming back due to fear of the virus. However, you're saying that going back to the gym is one way that you can combat it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's big time statistics over the past couple months about this from IRSA and member experience metrics that I believe the infection rate in gyms is 0.0003%, which is 500 times less than the national U.S. average. So that deems us as essential right there. So that's number one. That's the science piece of it. Number two is that what the gym does for you to combat chronic illness. And when I talk about that in pre-existing conditions, that's not just your mental acuity or your immune system, things such as that. It's stresses, anxiety, depression, being able to release that. I've talked to a lot of owners who are very concerned about their veterans in their gyms who suffer from post-traumatic stress injuries. How are they going to have an outlet to do that? Because the environment of their home is not conducive to exerting that energy that they need. So this goes multiple ways here, but absolutely safe, effective. Our clubs have ways to magnificently manage distancing, occupancy, cleaning, and sanitizing. It's not the perception of a high school PE class in there. This is a preventative health system that is proven to be safe since the beginning of when we reopened back in May. These statistics hold true. We just need to educate people and give the voice of other people to those who are unaware and educate them. That may come from other customers of the gym, speaking directly to them in the form of a testimonial, in the form of a review, showing people that to get. Now the feeling of anxiety there is very valid. So I think when we're trying to get people back into the club, it's acknowledging that. Leading with that empathy is key, because then they're relating that experience to you having them pay for equipment. We're trying to get people to invest in an experience and trust and a relationship setting that's going to allow them to combat the negative aspects of COVID and other illnesses.
Wow. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So other than COVID, what do you think is the number one reason people don't go to the gym? Particularly here in South Louisiana, I would love to hear your insight on that.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that societal influence. We think it's the results we should get from the gym are unattainable from what we see on social media or from what other people say and how other people produce it. So we recluse ourselves into isolation, which is automatically the most detrimental setting that you can be in. So I think it's that. I think that's number one, is that we see what others deem as what the only outcome is, and we think that's unattainable, and we don't do it.
Or we try to do it and we don't get it in X amount of time. So that's just demotivating in itself. And it's like, once you try something one time, why even try it again?
Sure. Good point.
Thank you. That's a huge topic that I talk about in my second book. So the I Killed My Own Killer book series, it's 4 parts. Number 1 is health and nutrition. Number 2 talks about social media and technology. And like whenever we were growing up, AOL Messenger, ICQ, like that was the cool stuff that you did after school, where now that's light years away from where we're at now. And it's only going to get 10 times worse. So there's teenagers, preteens that look at their phone, or even adults. We look at our phones at people that have had cosmetic surgery, or sometimes their bodies are just different than ours. And we are like, oh, I want to be like that. Instead of having that confidence, like we were talking about, in ourselves, we're constantly comparing ourselves to what we see on social media. And that in itself is a huge killer. So I totally agree. If we can just get rid of that, we will start making our health a priority.
Absolutely. And it can take, and it's just showing up. This doesn't have to be, and you have such good points there, Caitlin, is that it's not about like being there working out for 2 hours every day. Like it can be, my wife has a great suggestion when I was preparing for this, like go on a walk with your spouse. Like that's great. Walk your dog, together instead of thinking you have to ride the bike and burn X amount of calories. Your body doesn't register that to the point where people think it does. Your
Uh-huh.
body recognizes your ability to be in equilibrium, in a state of fulfillment. I think that's a lot more important than when thinking you have to burn X amount of things, or the perception, to your point too, is that we think we have to move to eat, but we should eat to move.
Mhm.
that's
That-
how that's how we're built. So we think, but that's what society and social media and things tell us
mhm.
is an opposition of that. So yeah, just to prove your point there, it doesn't have to be the world in one day. It can be showing up and doing and participating in movement that is fun and enjoyable for you.
I agree with Allie. If you are married, get your spouse and get outside, because
Yeah.
me and my husband have some of the best conversations whenever we have Lincoln in the stroller and we're just walking. You're looking at the world. It does so much for your emotional health, your cortisol levels, everything. It changes everything. So I totally agree with Allie. And like you said, just about eating to live versus living to eat. What would your suggestion be for, like, you and I? We live in South Louisiana. We're surrounded by crackling boudin, fast food restaurants. Like, some of my viewers in other countries are not going to know what boudin or gumbo is, and I'm happy they don't have to deal with it. But other cultures have their crutches too. So we're always surrounded by these fatty foods, or sometimes it's processed because it's convenient and easy. So if
Yep.
we're really supposed to be eating to live, what would your best piece of advice be for that?
Yep. Listen to your body. That's number one. Is we talk about mindful or intuitive eating.
Mhm.
When you're hungry, eat. Understand that there's a limit you may have when you're in a setting of eating that can get to the point of binging, but also in the same breath, treating yourself isn't cheating yourself, right? So that's something to that we must be okay with. There's things that we have in our culture that will be presented to us that, if we're shunning it away, what's our intention of shunning it away? Am I shunning it
Yeah.
away because I want to have, I don't want people to see me do this and question me because of my employer, right? Because I work in the fitness industry, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Certainly, I will do that. I will absolutely eat that. I will enjoy that, and I will recognize that I did that because I enjoy the food. At the
Mhm.
same time, I'm going to understand that for me to be here until I'm 110 years old with Allie, there's going to be other choices that I'm going to have to make too. So it's mindful recognition of what you're doing for that. But overall, it's realizing like you are not a body, you are somebody, and
Yeah.
because you are somebody, you have to fuel yourself,
Uh-huh.
because that's against your biology if you're not doing that and celebrating that you are okay with that. But I understand at the same cuff there. There are going to be a lot of influences out there. It's going to be hard, for what, again, that outcome is. But if you're going to be here for a long time, be mindful, eat colorful foods, and eat enough.
That's an awesome answer, is just eat for your body. Listen to your body instead of everything else that's out there telling us we need to eat this, we need to eat that. Whenever I used to cook for my husband when we were engaged, I used to make like the prettiest meals. And he's like, you only cook this because it's pretty. I want something that tastes good. But he was from Mississippi, so he's
Yeah.
used to everything being fried or
Yeah.
smothered. And I'm like, your girl don't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
And I was like vegan then, so everything that was
I hear
pretty
you.
colorful, of course, I loved it. But thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing those tips. Is there anything else that you would like our viewers and listeners to learn or hear about you?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give a quick plug for Anytime Fitness, real quick, if I may. Yeah, we are the coaching club who cares. If you are struggling with getting up and getting active during this time of uncertainty that we're faced with now, check out our Coach Care Connect series on Facebook. We offer free virtual workouts with certified personal trainers, Monday through Thursday, sometimes Monday through Friday as well, at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. You might stumble across me on there motivating you virtually one day. Stop into your club. Check out our website. We have great content. We have great people in there. When I say we're a coaching club who cares, going back to that statement I made, you're investing in an experience with individuals who are also invested in you, with what you have and what your desires are. And also, going back to it, show up. If there's someone you want to be, something you want to do, it's not going to happen tomorrow. Be patient with your process and show up and give that 1% or be 1% better every day, whether that is relationship, faith, family, or fitness. Show up and be that model of a person you want to be.
That's so good because it all ties in together.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool deal. That's what this brand is all about, helping us be healthier versions of ourselves, whether that's in finances, spiritual growth, relationships growth, health and fitness. It all ties in together. So I love how you gave so many key pointers on how to be the best version of yourself today. So thank you so much, Ethan, for sharing. I'm going to share this on our Facebook page. It'll be available on Apple iTunes and YouTube, and we'll be sure to put your social media contact in there as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me today. Thank you for how you've contributed also to my family. Real quick, Caitlin was my sister's babysitter for a long time, and I got to enjoy my baseball games, my extracurricular activities because of her care she had for my sister as well. So I had to mention that. Everyone who's watching, you have a wonderful person to learn from and be motivated by. So it's my pleasure to contribute today.
Thank you so much, Ethan. I love watching Nicole. I still feel like I'm her babysitter. Anytime I'm in Patterson, if she wants to kick it, let's go, girlfriend.
Nice. I'll let her know. She's going to be so excited to know I talked to you.
Awesome. Well, you take care, and it was awesome talking to you.
You as well. Thanks, Caitlin.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Wow, how about that episode? I know you are motivated to kick your butt into gear and become a better version of yourself from this experience of the I Killed My Own Killer book series and podcast. The crazy title of this podcast comes from the original personal development book series. Each book will transform you even more than listening to this podcast. Each book takes a deeper dive into how you can better yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, and even spiritually. Continue your journey of personal growth by being a part of the amazing personal growth book series that is written in a fun, fiction way with in-depth journals concluding each chapter. What are you waiting for? Go order your book at www.kfoxworth.com and join the Facebook community in the private Facebook group named I Killed My Own Killer book series and podcast. You don't want to miss out on the full trifecta experience, including the books, the podcast, and the mastermind community in Facebook groups. Keep your personal growth burning desire on fire and be part of it all. It all starts here. So thanks for listening to the podcast and stick around for more great episodes to keep you growing in all areas of life. You are killing it.